This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring a discussion on evolving global situation amidst Israel and Hamas war. The participants are Anil Kumar Trigunayat, former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, journalist.
And we have seen that over the last week or so, how this conflict has just raged on. And it also shows no sign of ending soon. We have seen US President Joe Biden visit Israel, and we have also seen India's statements, where we have condemned the terrorist attack by Hamas. Ambassador Turgniat, one, how worrisome is this conflict which has erupted since October 7th, when the terrorist attack by Hamas took place? And how do you see this panning out as in the next few days as we go along?
Well, any conflict has a destabilizing impact, and this one is no different. This was, in fact, more insidious for the simple reason that there were Hamas indulged in these mass killings and terrorist attack, which was condemned by most of the world. But at the same time, subsequently, Israel was the kind of bombings that have gone on and the sufferings of the people, civilian people, and the visuals of those have created a major problem for many countries, and who are now talking about some kind of a ceasefire or immediate supply of the for aid and assistance, relief supplies to the besieged Gaza. Now, there are no chances at the moment of any kind of a de-escalation for the simple reason that there are more than 200 Israelis and foreigners who are in the captivity of Hamas, which they will be using as a negotiating leverage. And that's why there is a possibility of a ground offensive that Israel has been willing to launch in order to decimate and destroy Hamas once for all. But in the meantime, the civilian casualties and the difficulties that are being faced by women, children, and all in Gaza Strip are very disconcerting for most countries. We have seen Prime Minister Modi's two statements and one by the MEA, which have very clearly talked about our fight against terrorism, sympathy with the Israelis as far as terror attacks were concerned. Then our position on the Palestinian issue, which is very clear for a two-state, peace-loving country living side by side and two-state solutions. At the same time, on this Al Ali hospital incident, Prime Minister has expressed his shock and concern and said that responsibility must be fixed. Now, these are the things, but at the same time, there are the larger dynamic of the region. And that dynamic is that why did Hamas do it now? Or what was its trigger? In my view, the trigger immediately was the Saudi Arabia and Israel rapprochement between these countries. We know that there have already been Abraham Accords with UAE and Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. And the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Biden also want the biggest catch of all. And there was supposed to be Saudi Arabia. Frankly, Saudi Arabia is the giant in the region. It is at the same time the King Salman is supposedly virtually the Islamic leader. And therefore, for that Islamic cause, if we see the Palestinians are not getting this support also, which will also be consumed by normalization process. And so that was one of the triggers. Secondly, as far as Iran is concerned, it has been also, which is the driver behind Hamas and Hezbollah and Houthis, was a bit disconcerted about this normalization, where US was going to play a greater role and provide some kind of a defense treaty or agreement to Saudi Arabia. So I think that dynamic is very important too. So Hamas partly has achieved its objective of derailing all these processes in the bargain, be it the IMAC, be it the normalization between Saudi Arabia, even the UAE is on the back foot. It has been recharged the whole of Arab Street, I would say. And at the same time brought the Palestinian issue to the fore, which is at the core of all these developments. Israel, in the meantime, obviously is entitled to take retribution or bring them to the books.
Ambassador Trugna, we have seen that in this Israel-Palestine conflict, we have also seen the role that is played by the US. And the US has always been a major player in the politics of this region. And we saw that the US President Joe Biden, he made this trip to Israel and he has come out in full support of Israel. And they have also vetoed the UNSC resolution because the US said it is disappointed that the resolution makes no mention of Israel's rights of self defense. So, I wanted to ask a little about Israel and the US connection here. When you have someone like the US backing Israel, do you think then it makes Israel much more powerful than what it really is on the ground in the region?
Israel is the main pivot of US foreign policy in the region. You remember in 1948 when Israel state was launched, within 9 minutes, the first country to recognize it was the United States. United States has the most powerful Jewish lobby, which is in the finance sector, industry sector, in the Congress, and everywhere. You can see this way. They have a disproportionate influence on the U.S. foreign policy, and the U.S. policy is domestic as well. And that is also a dictating factor for Biden and his company to do that. Besides, security and safety of Israel is very, very important for United States. So, which has been proven time and again. Now, this was one of the reasons that President Biden, who's going to face elections soon and will be also launching his own campaign, etc., needs that Jewish lobby to support him. And when Israel feels that its existence is in danger, it is entitled to defend itself. It is entitled to decimate as many Palestinians as it can in order to serve its purpose. Obviously, United States has no option but to stand with them. But this time Biden came, who personally doesn't like Netanyahu very much, but still he flew in just for a day. And because of this Al Ali hospital attack, we have seen that his visit was actually punctured quite a bit because the Arab countries, the quartet, which was Egypt and Palestinians who were supposed to meet him with Jordanian king, that was cancelled. So it is true that there is no doubt that Israel is the linchpin for the US foreign policy in the region. I would say US veto on the resolution is concerned, UN resolutions by Russia and UAE in the first and second one by Brazil is concerned. I think the first one, of course, because Russia did not mention it's about the Hamas terror attacks. So that was understandable, plus the geopolitics between them. But at the same time, the Brazilian one was asking for a pause, not even a full ceasefire, and provision of supplies, which for some reason, I don't know, the United States chose to veto. I mean, that is beyond comprehension.
Ambassador Tripnath, as you have talked about the U.S. stance and how they are conducting the business when it comes to the Israel-Palestine conflict. You have talked about this. There are other players. There's Saudi Arabia, there's Iran, and there is, of course, the whole region. I also wanted to touch upon the fact that for India, this also means a lot of delicate balancing because India today shares a very good, robust relationship with Israel. But India has also always backed the Palestinian cause, and we have great relationships with almost all the countries of the Middle East. So, do you feel that going forward, this is a balancing act that India will have to maintain?
Of course, I mean, India is not only doing the balancing act, it is also continuing on principled policy, in my view. As you rightly mentioned, we have a long standing position on the viable Palestinian state with two state solutions and peace and dialogue, diplomacy, and all that, which the spokesman from Ministry of External Affairs clearly articulated. But we also have a principled stand, which Prime Minister in his first tweet said was about the terror attacks. So India follows a zero terror policy. Besides, whenever we have been attacked, and we are the country which has suffered the most from terror attacks, Israel has always supported India in that. But at the same time, where the question comes to the humanitarian disaster and the catastrophe that happened in Gaza, Prime Minister had again conveyed his message on that, and it was very clear. So I think that as far as Palestine is concerned, these stand on its own. We stand for the Palestinian cause, we stand for the Palestinian state, but we denounce terrorism in full force.
Mr. Tripnath, there's a lot of concern that has been around the role of Iran. People have continuously said that it is Iran which is probably pulling the strings when it comes to the financing of Hamas. And we have seen Hezbollah in Lebanon, even though Hezbollah has not, gone full frontal with Israel, but still, you see the missile strikes, the warnings and the skirmishes which are happening on the border. How much do you think going ahead, would the Western world also, which doesn't enjoy good relations with Iran, How much would you need Iran on the table if you have to end this conflict or bring about some kind of a ceasefire to this conflict?
Well, as you know, Iran is a major player in the region. It's a big power. It has not been on good terms with the United States for a very long time now. It's one of the most sanctioned countries. It has more closer relations with Russia and China, and there's some kind of an axis that is emerging there. It is also a country which has three H. Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in Gaza, and Hezbollah in Lebanon and Syria. Now, these three instruments, which often operate in the Sunni Arab countries, to its advantage. So it fights by proxies to a great extent. There is no doubt about it. Besides Qatar and Turkey and other countries also support. But it is important that countries like Qatar and Turkey, who have also got tremendous influence on the Hamas, can help in this process of releasing the hostages. So Iran will remain an important partner. Iran is the power, but it may not directly come into conflict.
Ambassador Turgnat, there is also the economic aspect to this conflict. As you had mentioned, the IMEC is probably going to suffer because of this. We are all on the edge. The global supply of crude oil might get affected. How are the economies going to adjust or get affected by this conflict? How much more instability is this going to lend to the markets and the world order generally?
Well, what we are seeing is already the price of crude has gone up by more than 6-7%, and which is once. And if the cost of it goes up to $110, it will definitely impact all countries, including India, which are the major importers, which will have a cyclical impact and which will have overall in the economic development and growth. So it will be impacting all of them. So there is no doubt about it. If the war prolongs, we are going to see a direct impact on the economies of large number of countries, including India. So we are going to see that. But it is also going to change. The world order is already changing. As I always say that we are looking at a more, everybody thinks of multilateral order, multipolar order. But I think that there are only two poles, and those two poles will continue to be these kind of events, like whether it is Russia-Ukraine war or whether it is this Hamas-Israel war. All these are going to coalesce and polarize the world system even further.
Ambassador Turgnat, as you pointed about the world order, and we've seen a lot of people raising questions. Even the UN has come under a lot of criticism that UN has been kind of ineffective at, yet another crisis, another conflict. And do you feel that, we keep going back to the same demands that the UN needs to reform to address the world, and that doesn't seem to happen? So going forward, what do you expect to change as a result of what we have seen, the horrific attacks on October 7th? We've seen this humanitarian crisis where civilians have lost life on both sides. And how do you think this humanitarian crisis, do you think it puts pressure anywhere on the UN or anyone else to change? Or as you said, that another week, 10 days, we find some kind of a pause and we go back to the existing order of things?
Unless the Palestinian issue is resolved one way or the other, these are the kind of things that will continue to happen. If Hamas, suppose, is completely demolished and the Palestinian issue is not resolved, this might be transformed into something else. It's like a virus which mutates. But the cause of Palestine needs to be addressed, for which Israel will have to also take a non-security centric viewpoint and come on the table. So countries which are like-minded, which want the peace in the region, including India, in my view, must take some initiative. As far as the question of UN reforms is concerned, notice that whenever and wherever the interests of the superpowers are concerned, the United Nations Security Council and the United Nations is totally ineffective and redundant. And it is losing its relevance gradually if it is not reformed, as Indian Prime Minister has also said. So it is very important for them to reform so that there are other voices there. But in my view, none of the P5 countries want these reforms or to share the veto power with any other country.
With these comments, we bring today's discussion to an end. Thank you.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on evolving global situation amidst Israel and Hamas war. The participants were Anil Kumar Trigunayat, former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on a mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.